Are we ready? Sir.
Mr. Mayor, will the budget situation be so bad next year that the city might consider charging for residential garbage?
I don't know that. I don't think anybody can tell what. Number one, there's two separate questions. We should look at everything. I don't think there's anybody that's rushing out to go charge for garbage, but it's like saying never. You can't say never. Many other cities do, incidentally, charge for garbage. So. All of these things, you put all these ideas in the hopper and then you see what you have to do. You would like to not charge for anything, you'd like to not tax anybody. And that's not the real world. We know we're going to have to do some things in terms of what the economy is going to be like. I personally am very worried because I don't see the state, they can't pass a revenue bill. They passed a spending bill, but they can't pass a revenue bill. And until they do, we don't know what the situation is going to be next year, but it sure looks like they are not balancing their budget this year in ways that won't exacerbate their problems for next year. Next year is not an election year for them, and common sense says they'll be more willing to next year. They're going to have to face the issues, and if they face the issues fairly and squarely, it's going to cut back a lot of money for us. I think it's also clear. We have every reason to get more and more worried about whether FMAP money will come through. I've said we won't. We'll make a decision sometime before October. But if Congress were to say to me, "Not a chance," then I think you have to start facing the reality right now. At the last time I talked to them on both sides of both houses, we're going to get it. We're going to get it. I'm just starting to worry about that. I think it's clear there's not going to be another stimulus bill coming out of Washington for a while. The politics are very different today than they were 6 months ago. And we had an opportunity on the FMAP money when Congress passed a bill with it in, and the House passed a bill with it in, and on its way to conference committee, all of a sudden the leadership brings up another bill without it, and our delegation didn't get that bill stopped, and in fact it hurt New York City. It's actually hurt lots of states and cities across this country that had counted on FMAP money. But one issue is, should they be doing it? But the real issue for us is that when you think you have it, you build it into your budget, and that influences spending decisions. So I think we're going to have some problems next year, and we're going to look at everything. That's why I brought in a new team here to take a look at everything.
It sounds like, from what you're saying, that this would be at the bottom of the pile and not at the top of the list.
I don't think you want to even go there. I think it's just in the mix. I'm not going to rule out anything. There's no sacred cows. We're going to have to see what the situation is. And I can tell you, we will balance our budget again, and we will do it on time. That's what the law requires, and we follow the law, sir.
Speaking of FMAP, you had mentioned several weeks ago about layoffs as a necessity if FMAP doesn't come through. Is that still what you're thinking today?
Well, look, if we don't get money, we can't afford the size workforce we have. The business model for the city is fundamentally employing people, paying salaries and benefits for them. That's where 80% of our money goes. So, and the other monies go to things that we really can't cut back. You still have to pay the landlord rent. So it's the 80% that's the one variable you have. And if we have less money, we're going to have less people. Now we're trying to find places where the downsizing will be done by attrition. We're trying to find places where the downsizing will not hurt the core services. But you still have to have management. You still have to have some bureaucracy. Every time the federal government, the state government, or the city government passes a requirement for another law or another check and balance, all of which probably are good ideas, but every one of those costs money. And somebody's got to pay for it. And so if we have $300 million less this year, and next year that's $600 million, you just do the math. An employee costs you roughly $100,000.
But raising revenue is not on the table.
Only if you want to drive everybody out of the state. 0.5% of the people pay roughly 50% of our personal income tax. I don't know how much more skewed you can make it. At some point, people do leave. And I don't think the federal government's even worried about doing it, and nobody's going to leave the country. But the competition, Goldsmith had a pointed out in one of our presentations, I think it was $12 million the difference in taxes that LeBron James would have had to pay from going to Miami or coming here. I don't know if that was the decision making, but I suspect you'd think $12 million a lot of money, and I suspect so would he. You want to, you keep raising taxes, that's what happens, sir.
I'm wondering if you plan to bring up the Lockerbie bombing in your meetings with David Cameron today.
No, that's a federal issue, and there's no reason why I would bring it up. I'm going to welcome David Cameron to New York, and I'm going to have a hamburger or a hot dog with him later on. And I think, I can't wait to do it. I've known him for a long time, and I do think that and I do agree with him and the president that the wrong decision was made. It was a miscarriage of justice. And I do think the Prime Minister is probably doing what's right by ordering a review of the files leading up to the decision. But, it really was a painful event. It's maybe an understated way of saying it. It was a tragic event for the families involved and for those that died. But the bottom line is that the Scottish government did this, and he's called for an investigation, and that's fine. It's not something I would bring up.
Do you think the families of those who died on the plane deserve an apology from Britain?
I don't know. You have to talk to the British government. It was not something that took place here. I don't go around the world apologizing for things. It's not my business to do so. I think it's appropriate for us to even think about it, sir.
I was going to ask the same thing about 40 students from Syracuse University died on that plane, and lots of the New Yorkers in America.
Yeah. And so what's the question?
I was going to ask whether you were going to talk to
the President of the United States is running foreign policy and dealing with foreign governments. We are honored to welcome David Cameron, the Prime Minister, to New York. We have a lot of heritage in common, and there's a lot of back and forth in travel and exchanges. But I'll leave the foreign policy to the President of the United States, where it should be. I don't want to step on his purview. Yes, sir.
Can we just get your reaction to the final Wall Street regulation bill that the President
It's all in
signed
the
today?
details of the regulation. Well, the bill that was passed really didn't spell out anything. It simply said there will be an agency, there will be a this, there will be a that, and it's all of the, whether it has the right teeth, whether it approaches the problem intelligently, whether it does what we want it to do, is all in the regulations. So until you see the regulation, there's nothing you can say.
You don't have any sense whether it be good or bad for New York?
Until you see the regulation, I don't know what they're going to do. Yes, sir.
How responsive has the White House been to your calls about shaping that legislation? Have they been listening to you and to the New York?
This is a bill that was basically written in the Congress. The White House, my contacts with the White House were mainly with Tim Geithner and the Secretary of the Treasury, and he certainly, every time I called, took the call instantly, and he called me to post me on what was going on, and he assured me that in his judgment, this will not hurt New York from a competitive point of view vis-a-vis other cities, but built into that is an assumption as to what other countries and cities will do, and nobody really knows. But it was written in the Congress, not in the White House, basically. Yes, sir.
Mayor, back to Al Megrahi for just a second.
Back to?
Al Megrahi, the terrorist.
Yeah.
There are allegations that there's a connection between BP.
You have to talk to the White House. They conduct foreign policy, and it would just be inappropriate for me to try to make the White House's job more difficult. The president's got enough on his plate, and he doesn't need me chiming in to influence that. My job is to make sure that New York City continues to thrive, and I'm trying to do as well as that. And I need the help from Washington, but you'll have to talk to them. They're the ones that have the expertise. I don't have all the details of what actually went on or all the intelligence, but mainly